Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode from a Southside point of view. I am Josh. He is Terezi. We are two very busy baseball bloggers and podcasters regarding to the Chicago White Sox, but we are huge Star Wars nerds, and we're coming out with another episode talking about The Mandalorian, speaking about season 2 of the finale, chapter 16, The Rescue. Is it a series finale?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, they kind of gave that to us. That's an option for sure.
it is an option. So before you continue watching this YouTube channel, as far as this video, it has to be said, spoiler alert, okay? We're going to be speaking through every part of this episode from the beginning to the very end. And if you do not want to be spoiled, and if you have not seen chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, please stop watching this video. Go watch that most awesome episode of The Mandalorian. Come back so we don't ruin anything for you. But if you do love to be spoiled, there are people like that, then continue watching us because you're weird. You may not totally understand what we're talking about, but you have a pretty good idea before you go watch the episode. So, okay, everybody got enough time? All right, let's talk about chapter 16 titled The Rescue. And there seems to be a pretty clear plan, again, from chapter 15 on how it ended, Terezi, that Din, the Mandalorian, uses Moff Gideon's words against him, providing a threat of, I am coming after you. I know where you are, and I am coming. And it seems that step one of his plan is, step one, get Dr. Pershing, the clone engineer, and we get this wonderful exchange. First, we get to see Slave One in action, which is great to
Yes.
see. It kind of harkens back to episode 2, which that was Jango Fett, though, combating against Obi-Wan Kenobi. But we do get this wonderful exchange between the Empire pilot and Cara Dune, I should say, which the pilot recognizes the tattoo, the tear tattoo on Cara Dune's face, and kind of rubs it in her face that he was on the Death Star and he watched Alderaan get blown up. And a pretty sick burn from Cara Dune when he said that I was on the Death Star, and she replied, which one? And it's interesting because we talked about this in the last episode about the good guys versus bad, and on how that line could be blurry depending on the point of view. And for some reason, he finds a way to justify the Empire, Terezi, blowing up Alderaan, which obviously killed millions, by him, refuting, be like, you know how many millions you killed on the Death Star?
And it was a means to an end to stop terrorism, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like that's the way he frames it. It keeps going back to this, whatever doctrine you were given growing up is the one that you're going to believe, and these people are all fighting for these things, and Din just wants his kid. It's just like we got all these different people hate each other for different reasons. Guy just wants his kid.
Yep, that's all he wants. So Cara Dune shoots off Dr. Pershing's ear off, but kills the Empire pilot. It's a nice
So,
shot.
so that pilot, I've seen this actor before. You might, if you watched Agents of Shield, you probably thought, oh, this guy looks familiar. He is one of the bad guys in the later seasons, and an absolute psychopath in the show. An absolute psychopath in this show. And I think Disney should just continue to find any time they need a psychopath to use this guy. I don't know if he's really like that in real life, but hell, he could play that character. It's pretty amazing. But I also liked one thing that he did in here, as if we had no idea throughout the show that Dr. Pershing had anything to do with cloning. They just wanted to make it crystal clear here to anybody who wasn't paying attention. This guy's a clone engineer. That's like why did he need to say that? I don't know. But at least he made it absolutely clear, so there's no speculation there.
What is interesting, though, is that still after Return of the Jedi, and I think we're going to learn more about this story in the upcoming animated series, The Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
It appears that at some point, the Empire, especially the Emperor, wants nothing to do with clones.
Right.
The Emperor is dead, and now they're really interested in cloning again. That's what's intriguing when you look at the history of the Empire on how
and droids.
Androids, yes, on how at one point they had no interest in they had all I should before that they have all the interest in creating clones and creating a droid separatist army to stage this war to distract everyone so Palpatine can take over the entire galaxy. When he takes over the galaxy, he has no interest in clones and droids. And right. When he dies, there is a lot of interest in clones and droids. Just kind of interesting on how that really shakes out. But this is for those that really want to get into Star Wars lore, this was a fantastic dialogue back and forth between the pilot and Cara Dune, and how it's still a sore spot for Dune that Alderaan was just blown into pieces by the Death Star, even though that event happened years before where we currently are in The Mandalorian. But yeah, even the meme, I had friends on that Death Star.
You know, I love that. I have that shirt. I'm a big fan of that of that meme.
So they get Dr. Pershing. Step 2, get Bo-Katan to help. So we talked about Din's Suicide Squad in a previous episode of this show. And I just had a feeling that Bo-Katan's going to come back. Now, what's interesting, Cherizi, Sasha Banks, the wrestler who is on the left, said in an interview that was the only episode she was appearing in when we first meet her with Bo-Katan, and that she wasn't in any other episodes of the series. Liar! She lied to us because there she is. And it kind of makes me wonder if they shot this in back-to-back days, which makes sense as far as how entertainment goes. If you have someone for a couple of weeks, you try to shoot multiple episodes with that actor so you get all the shots that you need. But she's there, so she lied to us. Maybe she didn't know. I think she did, but a nice distraction. So good job playing the heel, Sasha Banks. But yeah, so Bo-Katan is officially part of the Suicide Squad. How did you feel about this scene when they approach her at the bar?
So I had a couple thoughts on this scene. So first, last time we saw them, there was a third person with them.
Yeah.
Right? He's just mysteriously gone. So what I actually thought the end credits scene was going to be, and we'll get to the end credits scene and what we think about it, but what I thought it was going to be was just that guy coming out of the bathroom of that cantina, kind of like, where'd everyone go? Like, and he just missed the whole thing. Like that's kind of what I thought was going to happen. Also, I'm watching this, and you know, they come in there, and she's basically, he tells her, you know, that Gideon has the child, and she's like, well, you'll never find him. And he's like, well, yeah, it took me 12 seconds and I found him. And it kind of made me think maybe Din should be in charge here, because I mean, I'm not one to speak, but it seems to me that Bo-Katan's just sitting in a bar, not really doing anything about any of this shit, and just has given up that she could possibly find Gideon. Din needed to do it lickety split. He's got it done. He found Gideon. I'm a little less impressed with her at this point. I almost feel like she's kind of broken at this point. So I don't know. I want to really be excited about the Bo-Katan character, but at this point in the episode, I'm just kind of like, what's going on here? Like, what? Why are you not doing anything? Why are you not going like, I think I know where he's at, or he's got dark troopers. Like, tell me one of those things. Just the fact that you're just like, oh, you'll never find that guy. It was a little disappointing.
Yeah, with Bo-Katan though, it is it is a strange journey for this character. And we can get more into when we talk about the Darksaber, a very popular topic right now in social media circles when speaking about as far as this episode, which we will talk about the Darksaber. But we first meet her part of Death Watch. And Death Watch is clearly against the Duchess, which the Duchess is her sister.
Yeah.
And it's not until Maul gets the Darksaber and takes over Death Watch that Bo-Katan leaves. And since then, she joins the Night Owls, or she creates the Night Owls. And she's always been, I guess, on this journey, Chirizi, to recover what was lost after her sister died.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very strange path. And she is a warrior. And we'll talk about that later this episode. She is one of the fiercest Mandalorian warriors that you will see. But just because you are a warrior does not make you a good leader. And I don't even know if we know that about Din either, or either Boba Fett. But that's what was interesting about this cantina scene, is that you have 3 different kind of Mandalorians, right? You have Bo-Katan, royalty, and I like that kind of twist to it, or addition by Boba Fett's dialogue, continuing to call Bo-Katan princess. And then you have the religious zealot and Din. And then you have the Night Owls. And then watching Sasha Banks wrestle Boba Fett, that was fun. And then, of course, you have Bo-Katan saying, if we had half that energy, we could have defeated the Empire and Mandalore and not lost their home planet. Which kind of suggests that maybe there wasn't much of a fight from the Mandalorians before the Great Purge.
You know what they could have used? All those clones that they're obviously racist against.
Very much so.
Clones are a person too. So like you should treat them with some respect. But yeah, I mean, like that, I think that was weird to me in that episode too. Like they, Bo-Katan's telling Din, you're like this religious zealot and you're way off base with the way you guys think. And then Boba Fett comes in there basically wanting to help.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, you're a clone, we don't want to deal with you, And
but that's just how the Mandalorians are. This is why it's so difficult for those that are not hardcore Star Wars fans that are being introduced to Mandalorians for the first time in this series, Chirizi. They do not get along. And it is very rare that you get all of the Mandalorian tribes and clans together. It's almost similar, if you are a huge Lord of the Rings fan, to the Realm of Men. Like, Rohan does not want to answer the call from Gondor, because Gondor is not going to help Rohan when Rohan's in trouble. So why should Rohan help Gondor, right? And that being divided puts both in huge trouble as far as in the books and in the movies. And it's the same thing with the Mandalorians. Like, you have many different houses. Sometimes the houses are united, and it creates this amazing army, a legion of warriors that could go up against any force, the Republic or the Empire. They could hold their own. But man, I don't know. I don't know how many civil wars there are in Mandalorian history. There just seems to be so many.
Every character you meet had fought in the one of the Mandalorian civil wars. Like,
right. So they did a really good job with this scene, that even though you have them wearing Mandalorian armor and they come from different paths of the Mandalorian way, Mandalorians, for the most part, just don't get along. Even in their own tribe or house, they don't always get along. There is always conflict. That is the only consistent thing about Mandalorians. There is always conflict.
Yeah, and it shows here, and you gotta love just that, like, it went from asking a favor into flamethrowers in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, and that's how it is. That's how Mandalorians negotiate. If you don't get a flamethrower in the face, talks weren't good. Okay, so eventually they agree to help Din. So step 3 is have Dr. Pershing tell them everything without having to torture him, which is odd. I wonder, why is Dr. Pershing so helpful in this particular scene, telling them what to expect, where to find the kid, and then, of course, boom, 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 Dark Troopers.
I mean, ever since the first time we get introduced to Dr. Pershing, I feel like he does not like his job. He's he's been he's been on LinkedIn every day of the entire Empire series, like the entire Mandalorian series, trying to get out of the Empire. And so even though they just shot his damn ear off, he's going, you know what? I like you folks. I'm gonna help you out. may I
many,
have may I have a job in your organization?
how many LinkedIn connections do you think Dr. Pershing has?
Well, you know what? Do clones have LinkedIn profiles? Because I
Ah.
think he could have millions then. But if they don't, if they're not allowed to, if the Mandalorians keep them off of there for some reason, then I would say that very few. I think very few people want to deal with that guy. But he definitely wants out. I mean, like, it's very, very obvious. He's a very scared person for being high up in the Empire. So I think he just wanted anything other than to be in the Empire.
Lucasfilm should totally do that, by the way. Just create fake LinkedIn accounts for the Star Wars characters. So you have all these people wanting to connect with these fictional characters in LinkedIn. As far as it's Star Wars, it would be hilarious to see what Dr. Pershing's LinkedIn profile looks like.
We'll see how drunk I get tonight. Maybe there will be a Dr. Pershing account in the morning. We'll see what goes on.
But we learn about the Dark Troopers in this scene, that they require a lot of energy. They're in cold storage, so they just can't start up right away. There is a process. It takes some time. And that's interesting to me because, wow, it requires a lot of energy, Chirizi.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's a simple math. A mass consumption of energy means a pretty, formidable foe for our heroes that will have to face off against the Dark Troopers. And we do get that opportunity to see them, but I think this is what is clear at this point is the deal between Bo-Katan and Din for Bo to go along with Din and help him with this quest. Of course, it shouldn't take a lot to twist her arm, right? I know where Moff Gideon is. You want Moff Gideon, so let's go get him. All he wants is Grogu, and Bo-Katan wants the Darksaber and the cruiser. Now, I feel like Din is getting screwed over in this deal. He's not getting much in return.
I really like, though, throughout this episode, that Din's compassion and want for the child and the child's well-being is almost impossible for everyone else to understand. Like, Bo-Katan just assumes he wants to be powerful, and that he wants to take the light cruiser. He wants the Darksaber, and he's kind of like, I don't care about that. Take all the stuff you want. I just want to go get the kid. And it confounds her. It later confounds Gideon. Like, they're like, what? You don't want this? This is this awesome thing, and it's not awesome in comparison to the child, to him. And so I think people, you start to see that, like, these other people in the show are power hungry people, and Din is just trying to take care of that kid. Like, that's all that he's concerned with. And they can't even understand that idea.
And Bo does ask him to reconsider his position in helping her retake Mandalore. We get a snide comment from Boba Fett when he hears Mandalore. In the sense of Mandalore, the Empire turned that planet into glass. So I have to ask, from a continuation of our last episode that we did, speaking about Operation Cinder, I wonder, Chirizi, if Mandalore suffered the same fate as many planets did with Operation Cinder.
Yeah, is it just like a barren, like, is it a barren wasteland now? Like the fact that he's like, because previously we had talked about it and we were like, okay, like they made it sound like it had exploded, and but it obviously didn't, because Bo still knows where it's at, and that she wants to revive it. Did they put it into like an ice age? Like, did they, whatever they did, like, because the term "it's glass" would make me think of like massive glaciers, right? Like just like sheets of
Mhm.
ice. And did they like send Mandalore into like an ice age with whatever weather contraptions they have for Operation Cinder?
The only time I've ever really heard this phrase is in the video game series Halo, in which the Covenant, the alien race, has these super ships that just shoot down heat rays, and it's like vol- volcanic impact, where
Mm,
it turns the ground into obsidian.
okay.
Eventually, the planet will heal, but it takes decades and decades for it to heal. Very much like a volcano eruption. All this lava is spewed and you get a bunch of rock, but eventually, this material, this magma becomes very fertile soil, and then you will get plant life grown there again. But it takes a long time to
So
do so. And I'm wondering if that's what happened with Mandalore, if it also suffered the same fate with Operation Cinder. Moff Gideon was responsible for Operation Cinder for Mandalore, and that is Mandalore's fate. That this is something that I was wondering when watching, and I've seen this episode 3 times now. When Boba Fett mentions that Mandalore has been turned to glass, I wonder if Mandalore was part of Operation Cinder.
that that makes a lot of sense. And there's a good comparison in Star Wars of a planet that's suffered a similar fate. So I think we're all familiar with Mustafar, which is
Mm-hmm.
where kind of the um, episode 3 ends, pretty much, and where Vader lives after that. Uh, if you've played the VR game, they give the backstory of Mustafar, and it was not like a volcanic planet. It wasn't like all covered in lava. It was due to this. I forgot what the name of the tool was, but they tried to resurrect somebody from the dead, and all kinds of bad stuff happens. And basically, it turns into what the Mustafar we know, and that actually can be healed. And you see it in um, episode 9. Uh, not to bring up episode 9 to people. I know it's upsetting. But at the beginning, they're on Mustafar, and there's trees and stuff. It's not like this lava planet where they're at. So uh, it could be that Mandalore is healing, nature's healing. They got a Starbucks there now, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, it's possible that that's you know everyone's view of it is it's covered in obsidian, but it's actually becoming a planet again, and we're gonna see it at some point.
And that's why you would get some skepticism about Mandalore when people hear it in the show and maybe in future episodes of other shows or movies, is that, listen, Mandalore has been lost. And you have people like Bo-Katan who refuse that it's a complete loss. And it may not be, but I think that's a story for a future episode or movie down the road. But this is the deal, and it's important to know as far as what's being asked from both parties. That Din just wants Grogu; he just wants Baby Yoda back, and Bo-Katan wants a lot. She's asking for a lot.
she wants a ship. It's a little.
She wants a light cruiser that can send out TIE fighters or X-Wings or Mandalorian fighters, and she wants the sword that unites all Mandalorian houses. She is asking for a lot.
And so much so that she leaves her buddy in the bathroom, Home Alone style.
Yeah. So, continuing on the plan. Step 4, board the cruiser. I wonder the way that they did this, and I could not get a good screenshot, so I apologize. But in the episode, we see a TIE fighter get launched from the light cruiser. I wonder if that is a preview of an upcoming Star Wars ride for Disney, Teresi,
Oh man, that is a
which
good call.
you board a TIE fighter or you board an X-Wing, and the way that it was shot was very amusement park like, where you're getting the seat and you're being launched into like the video screen, and then you feel weightlessness as you leave the tractor beam or the launch pad. The way that they shot it makes me wonder if that's going to be part of a future amusement park ride at Disney, because it was really cool. But this plan was really awesome as well, jumping out of hyperspace in the shuttle, having Boba Fett and Slave One put on a good show to make it look as real as possible, and ignore the orders from the bridge and to go into the cruiser that way. I really enjoyed, and then just watching Boba Fett own the TIE fighters by turning the guns around and making quick work out of them.
I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Seeing Slave One in action is just cool. It
It
is.
is.
It's awesome, and it was. It. I like this plan. It's one of those few times where you're watching something and in one of these, in a sci-fi movie or whatever, and you're like, that's actually a pretty good idea. Like, this is a good plan to do this. This makes sense that it would work, and that it would catch Gideon, even who seems to know everything. It would even catch him a little bit off guard. Not totally, because he definitely was sending TIE fighters right out there to try and shoot down people and see what they could do. But yeah, I thought it was a good. I was impressed that there was a reasonable plan to get in there.
Yeah. And they board the cruiser and they just go to town, and Operation Ladies Night, which I thought is awesome. You got 2 night owls, you got a shock trooper, and you have the assassin. And yeah, these ladies just destroy as far as everyone in their path, and they make quick work. Everybody gets an awesome action scene. And I love the way that Peyton Reed, the director of this episode, really shot this, because it's something that it didn't dawn on me until afterwards. It's like, oh yeah, these ladies are awesome. Like, yeah, girl power. This is terrific. We should see more of this, as far as in all forms of entertainment, especially with Hollywood, but especially in Star Wars, because Treasy, we know these guys. You're gonna get guys who are like, oh my God, please stop forcing this down our throats. But you got 2 night owls, 2 elite Mandalorian warriors, you got a shock trooper, and you have one of the best assassins in the galaxy. What more could you ask for to board a Imperial light cruiser and just wallop as far as all these stormtroopers in their path?
And what I loved too is, like, you see it in some movies where you're just like, well, they just kind of forced this situation, right? This situation makes the most sense. If you were going to all the people that you put in place for this is what makes the most sense to put these people here together to do this. It makes total sense. Now, Josh, I have an insane theory that will not become true,
Okay.
but I want it to. And it's kind of because I think Ming-Na Wen is just awesome, but it's also because they're going to start giving her a backstory, because she's going to be in the Bad Batch.
Yes.
She'll be voicing a character, her own character, Fennec Shan, and then we'll get to the other part later. But in the books, in the Legends books, there was a character named Mara Jade who was the hand of the Emperor, and she was Force sensitive. She was not really a Sith. She was not a Jedi. She was Force sensitive, and she was just an assassin. She would go kill people for the Emperor. I don't need the exact storyline, because I don't want Fennec Shan to marry Luke Skywalker or anything like that. But I want a similar story. And when she dodged the gunshot or laser bolt, whatever we're going to call those, when she dodged it, I know people dodge them in the movies. When she dodged it, I kind of felt like, are they leaning towards force sensitivity here? And if
Mhm.
so, man, I want this to be the case. Like I want it to happen. I'm going to try and will it into existence by talking about it. But that I think it would be incredibly fun if she was like just like a force sensitive non-good person. Like she's still a bad person. And so I think that's a character you need, especially when all we've seen now are kind of in this realm is Jedi.
Yeah, I that scene where she dodges the bolt and gets a headshot through the square there, the diamond outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I thought that was very John Wick-esque,
Mm.
which is just again just badass. Again, she's an assassin. Like you do not mess with her. She goes into a dark room and you are hiding. She will find you and she will kill you. That's what makes her character, I think, awesome. And it's just another side of Star Wars that we usually don't see. The only thing I'm going to nitpick here, Dave Filoni, is that you have Mandalorian shooting red bolts where every other reference in Clone Wars and Rebels, they are shooting gold bolts.
Mm.
I wanted to see that because when
I
you're watching the animation, you're getting an idea of who's shooting whom, and you could tell where the Mandalorians are shooting from because they shoot gold bolts, but not in this episode, not from the Night Owls. They are
I
shooting red bolts.
I wonder if it doesn't show up properly in a live action show.
It probably does not, and
I mean,
that's a great explanation. Totally makes sense. Again, I'm just nitpicking here, but it would be cool to see.
one last thing on this, because this I mean this is a good portion of the episode because they destroy stormtroopers
Yeah.
all throughout. It's awesome. Um, I like that Favreau and Filoni just lean into the idea of stormtroopers are the worst shots on the planet when Kara literally has no weapon other than the the broken gun and just walks up and just knocks out like three guys who are shooting at her, wildly missing from like 4 feet away. I just like that they're like, you know what? These guys have been terrible at this for the past 45 years. We're just going to keep going with it. Who cares?
I do like the fact that she does fix her gun, and they're like, "Do you need help with that?" And she's like, "No," and then bam, slams into the floor, and door opens, and it starts working again. Like again, it just totally awesome, and I hope we get more scenes of this, especially with Ahsoka and the Rangers of the New Republic. This is a nice breath of fresh air. Keep doing it, and there's good reason to do it. It doesn't this did not feel like it was forced at all. So while they are kicking ass, Din is getting his ass kicked because he finds out that it's too late. The dark troopers have been activated and the doors are opening and they're about to leave. And he uses the pin to try to close the door, but one dark trooper gets out. And we see Terezi just how strong a
Yes.
single dark trooper is. And I'm glad I was able to find this screenshot of Din just getting his face punched in. Like he just seems like this is going to be a battle loss, and he does not have the same type of strength because we've seen him in these one-on-one battles where he just dominates, but here he's getting dominated.
And the thing that came to mind when I'm watching this, and that thing is just punching in his face, trying to crush his skull. I couldn't think of anything else other than Game of Thrones
Yeah.
when his head is just pulled apart.
Just crushed in by the
Yes.
eyes.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's grotesque, but at the same time I'm like, man, if he would have had that Beskar helmet, that show would have been a lot different. But but it does, I think it needs to prove a point about the Beskar that they make earlier in the show when they talk about the Darksaber, is that pure Beskar can stop the Darksaber. And you need to point that out at this point, just to make sure that like there's no question about whether or not he has pure Beskar, because soon he's going to have a problem that requires it.
Right.
But also this fight is really cool. And man, give me all the Dark Troopers. I am such a big fan of this. They're just badass. I want a battalion of Dark Troopers in every show now. I'll never get tired of it. And the fact that they fly is even more awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they are Mandalorian killers.
Yeah,
And
that feels like what it is. It feels like they're almost built for that. If they would have been made of Beskar, then oh boy, that would have been that. Or maybe they are actually. I don't know that we've proven that they're not, because they're definitely, you shoot them, that just bounces off. I guess maybe we do prove it later when we can get to that.
yeah. Well, Din does win this battle by using the Beskar spear to get through the neck and pretty much tear the head off.
Mm-hmm.
So he does survive as far as the Dark Trooper, and then he launches the rest in space. But I have this image here of the Rock'em Sock'em robots, because this is also good foreshadowing on just the massive punching power of the Dark Trooper that we see later this episode against a Blastor. Like, Blastors are incredibly strong. And I think when you rewatch this episode and you see Din getting his face punched in, just another example of how strong Beskar steel is. And yeah, I really enjoyed, as far as this fight, that it was satisfying that Din did win, but there was a part of me as well just to see him getting whooped, just to display on how strong the Dark Trooper is. And just because we saw these Dark Troopers doesn't mean that they're all destroyed. Like, they totally could come back. And it would be really interesting if they ever get in the hands of Thrawn, and Thrawn using them against the Republic. That would be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, him deploying those would be amazing.
Now, the next step after what he thought, he got rid of the Dark Troopers. Din finds Grogu, and there's Gideon, always one step ahead of our heroes. And I thought the dialogue was excellent between Din and Gideon. Gideon comes off like understanding the bond between Grogu and Din, and in a way looks like he's admiring the bond that they have and willing to let Din take Grogu until double crossing him. But the line of "just assume I know everything" makes me think, as far as what Favreau and Filioni can do with Moff Gideon in the future. Like, what do you think he all knows, Terezi, about our characters and the current events of where we are in Star Wars?
I mean, he's the kind of guy that I think knows the full plan. It seems he knows a lot more of the plan than I initially thought. And I also, like, he's a charismatic character. I definitely, for a moment, was like, I think he might just let him take the kid.
He's very charismatic for
an
Empire character, right?
Yes. Yeah. More so than really any other Empire character you've seen, with maybe the exception of Thrawn. Mm-hmm. But even Thrawn, you kind of always know what his play is, especially when he's talking to somebody who's basically a prisoner. But in this case, like, it just felt like Gideon knows so much that he can't possibly be on the outside of whatever larger plan there is. Now, what I don't know is whose plan it is. Mm-hmm. Is he part of a Thrawn plan, or is he part of a First Order plan? It's unclear at this point. And as I said before, I don't think that those are the same thing. I think they have two separate agendas going. I don't know who Gideon is working with or working for, but he knows too much to just be kind of like out there on his own, one man wrecking crew type thing. It just doesn't seem that way.
And something I did not know: the Empire clearly has handcuffs for babies.
Yes, they do, and for force-sensitive babies, which is even more upsetting. Like these are basically Padawan handcuffs.
They thought of
Uh,
everything.
I mean, you're on a light cruiser, so it's not even like you've got the big Star Destroyer where you might have all of your different stocks. He specifically had these. This is. I mean, if we want to say Gideon's a guy who's prepared for literally everything, this is evidence. He has tiny force sensitive handcuffs.
So we get our battle. As soon as Din gets close to Grogu, Din just goes to town using the dark saber on Din. But of course, the Beskar is blocking, and we saw Din blocking thrashes from Ahsoka Tano in a few episodes ago of The Mandalorian, and we get our battle. Were you expect? Was this the duel that you were expecting in this episode, Cherizi? Din with the Beskar spear against Gideon and the darksaber.
I've been waiting for this since he got that spear. I mean, like that. It felt like this has to happen. And when this, and we talked about it when the spear was still there after the Razor Crest got blown up, we were like, okay, this is gonna happen. And as soon as Gideon was like, "Yeah, go ahead, just take the kid," I'm like, "Well, here we go." And and it did not disappoint, man. And there's a scene in here where Din kicks backwards
Yeah, that was
to hit
awesome.
the spear up to block the dark saber, and part of me was like, "How do you get so good with that so quick?" And then the other part of my brain said, "Shut up and don't care about that because this is just awesome and just enjoy it."
Well, Death Watch is the Mandalorian clan that saved Din.
Mhm.
Maybe there is hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, I did think about that. I thought, like the fact that someone would have made a Beskar spear makes me think that that's a weapon in their arsenal and that they have trained with them at some point. So he's familiar with it. Just like when he got the jetpack, like it took like 45 seconds for him to be good at it. Like it basically like he was bad at it in the first episode they showed him with it, and then he's great at it moving forward. Um, because he trained with it as a kid. He grew up in that, and so it seems like he's been training to be a warrior like his whole life. So I'm not surprised when he's good at any of these things. But man, just the overall fight, and like it just it's cool because it's two guys that are not force users. They're not force wielders,
Right.
right? But they're using the spear and the lightsaber, and man, it it was still awesome. Like it's how someone would fight if this was just a sword or this is just a spear. And man, I couldn't if they would have made that like 45 minutes or 3 hours, I would have watched every minute of it.
And I like the special effects, like the dark saber turning the spear red hot. We did not see that in Ahsoka's battle
Hmm.
against the spear, but we do see it with the dark saber when Moff Gideon is applying intense pressure, a pressure point into the Beskar steel. We see it turn glowing red. And I'm assuming it doesn't impact Din because he's wearing, Beskar steel on his forearms and it's not impacting him. And he can hold the spear there. But with that special effect, I wonder if it kind of adds even more legacy to the dark saber compared to other lightsabers, because Ahsoka's lightsabers are incredibly unique, but they did not create that high heat pressure point. But the dark saber does, and I wonder, what element of this dark saber allows it to do that while other lightsabers don't.
I think that there's got to be some kind of dark side portion to the dark
Hmm.
saber. And I we were talking about this not too long ago, Josh. I really want to have them explore the kind of background of Tar Vizsla and what happened with him, and why the dark saber is such a prized possession to Mandalore. Like they get into it in the show in Clone Wars a bit, but it's kind of lore, right? I'd like to see how this came about, why he was no longer with the Jedi, why the Jedi kept it.
Mhm.
You know, like it seems like if the Jedi were like, get out of here, that he would be able to take his lightsaber with him. Like um or you know, if he left on his own accord. But for some reason they had to keep it. Like they felt the need to keep it, and they kept it locked away. Like they didn't want anyone near it.
Could we see that in the Acolyte show?
It could be, I mean, it could be one of those things where they reveal it as a story, right? Like that's
Mhm.
part of like, this is, you know, it would be interesting if part of the Sith religion included the dark saber, like where they talk about it as though it's a lightsaber that belongs in their lineage, as opposed to like the light side ones, you know, the ones we see, you know, a little bit later in the show.
We're going to talk a lot about the dark saber here as far as this episode, because when Din escorts Moff Gideon to the bridge, so we have the Night Owls, the Shock Trooper, and the Assassin make it to the bridge. Again, still kicking ass, kill everyone in the bridge. There are no survivors, no mercy. Din brings Moff Gideon alive, and Cara Dune is very happy that Moff Gideon is alive. But we see disappointment immediately in Bo-Katan's face when she sees the Darksaber turned on and in the hands of Din. And Din was following through with his deal. Here you go. Here's a Darksaber. And Bo-Katan does not take it right away. And we get this dialogue from Moff Gideon explaining to Din that she has no rightful claim to the Darksaber. The only rightful claim anyone has with a Darksaber is if they win it in combat. Now, when I watched this Chirizi the first time, I think I said that is incorrect 3 times during his dialogue. And I think I was annoying my girlfriend Kim doing it. Like, that's not true. That's not true. That's Bo-Katan did not get the Darksaber in combat. Sabine Wren handed it to her.
Right.
So it brings up the question, who is the rightful owner of the Darksaber? Because again, there's different types of nerds in all entertainment. And there is a crossover with Harry Potter nerds and Star Wars nerds. And there's been a lot of conversation of, is the Darksaber like the Elder Wand in Harry Potter? Spoiler alert, the Elder Wand is incredibly important in Harry Potter lore. I did not read the books. I just sometimes reluctantly watched the movies until they got a lot better towards the end. But there's always the question of who can actually possess and have the full power of the Elder Wand. And that is a big storyline in Harry Potter until the very end. And it's one of those surprises and chain of custody issues. So let's go through this with the Darksaber. Because again, if you have a rightful claim to the Darksaber, you can unite all the houses of Mandalore. And you get to have one of the greatest fighting forces in the galaxy if you are the rightful owner of the Darksaber.
Before you go to the next, we're here, but just so in case you haven't watched the Clone Wars and Rebels and all these things, you've had years to do so. So we don't care. We're going to do spoilers.
Yeah. So in Clone Wars, we meet pre-Vizsla. So Vizsla is, I think they are the house that are the rightful owners at this stage of the timeline, Chirizi, of the Darksaber.
So I believe he goes and recovers it correctly. If I'm correct, he goes and recovers it from the Jedi Temple. That's how they get it. Because, like I said, the Jedi kept it once Tar left the Jedi Order.
Right. And he is the leader of Death Watch. Is Pre voiced by Jon Favreau?
He is.
Okay.
He is. And so then the character in season 1 that is Jon Favreau, I believe, is also of Vizsla clan.
Yeah. So Pre has the Darksaber, and he leads the Mandalorian clan Death Watch. Again, Bo-Katan is part of Death Watch at this time, and he's against everything that Duchess Satine stands for with Mandalore. Mandalore wants to be independent. They have switched from elite warriors to pacifism, and he is viewed as an extremist, and he decides that he will take over Mandalore. And he can only do that with the help of Maul. But as he attempts to backstab Maul, Maul demands a duel with Pre. And Maul defeats Pre. Makes sense. Former Sith warrior against Mandalorian. Even with the Mandalorian that has a Darksaber, you're not going to beat someone that is as strong as the Force as Maul. Maul decapitates Pre.
That's
the
a
Darksaber.
That's a very satisfying kill. I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, great episode. And I think that's when Clone Wars, because everybody that's starting Clone Wars has been asking, when does this stop being a kid show? Right when Maul decapitates Pre. That's when it ends, stops being a kid show and becomes something very serious. So Maul owns the Darksaber. 17 years later in the Star Wars timeline, we see the Darksaber again in the show Rebels. And Ezra discovers it in the episode, this is season 3 of Rebels, episode 11, Visions and Voices. And in this episode, Maul and Ezra are trying to combine their memories because Maul is trying to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Ezra's trying to answer the question, how do I defeat the Sith? Well, thanks to some potion by the Night Sisters they both drink, they discover that they have the same answer that they're looking for. Obi-Wan Kenobi is on a planet with 2 suns, and Ezra must find Obi-Wan Kenobi to learn how to destroy the Sith. Well, when they drink this potion, Maul realizes, oh crap, we have to pay the price of using this Night Sisters potion. And in order to learn the truth or to discover an answer to your question, drinking the super powerful potion, it demands a sacrifice. Like, you have to sacrifice a body to the Night Sisters that they can possess. And trying to save Ezra, you have Sabine Wren, a Mandalorian, and Canis Jaren, right?
Kanan.
Yeah. Kanan, who is a Jedi who survived Order 66 and has been training Ezra. They get possessed by the Night Sisters on accident. Maul sees this as an opportunity to take Ezra as his apprentice, fly away, screw those guys, leave the past behind. We obviously know where we need to go next as far as in our quest. We are both seeking the same thing. Ezra says no. He goes back to try to save his friends. Maul leaves. When Ezra goes back into the altar, he must face his friends. Sabine is possessed, and Sabine, with being possessed by a Night Sister, wields the Darksaber. And so you have Ezra battling Sabine with the Darksaber. Now, this is Treasy where it gets interesting because this is combat. Ezra wins that combat by force pushing Sabine out of the cave, which the Night Sisters lose that power.
Right.
So Sabine is fine. So technically, in combat, Ezra should have claim to the Darksaber. However, at the end of this episode, Ezra uses both his lightsaber and the Darksaber to destroy the altar to save his friends. At the end of this episode, it's just laying there on the ground. Like, Ezra totally forgot about it. And Sabine sees it, so she takes it for herself at the end of the episode. A few episodes later in this same season, there is a whole episode about the trial of the Darksaber. So if you want to learn more, I highly recommend it. It's a 23-minute episode that you can find on Disney+. You learn a little bit more about the history of the Darksaber, and you see, as far as Sabine trained with the Darksaber, with Kanan, again, a Jedi. And later in the season, Sabine understanding what she is wielding, goes back to her family home, House Wren. And when she is there, she discovers that her house has actually made a deal with the Empire and Gar Saxon to save themselves from destruction. And when Sabine is taken into custody by Gar Saxon, the Darksaber is confiscated. But then Sabine challenges Gar Saxon to a duel using Ezra's lightsaber. And she does win as far as that duel. And her mother, Ursa Wren, makes this comment in that episode that the Darksaber won in combat is the only rightful claim to the Darksaber. Getting it in any other way, stealing it, finding it, does not give you rightful claim to the Darksaber. So it is written as far as in canon for Star Wars, in Rebels, and it is spoken by Ursa Wren, that the Darksaber won in combat is the only rightful claim. When Sabine Wren wins her duel against Gar Saxon, she now has a rightful claim to the Darksaber. This is important because in the beginning of season 4 of Rebels, when multiple Mandalorian houses help House Wren save Sabine's father, Sabine, in her mind, rightfully gives the Darksaber to Bo-Katan because Sabine believes Bo-Katan is the best leader for the Mandalorians. And at this moment, you have the multiple houses of Mandalore swear fealty to Bo-Katan and their allegiance to her. At this moment, uniting the Mandalore houses as she fires up the Darksaber. Bo-Katan does not win the Darksaber in combat. And even though, Chirizi, you have multiple houses swear their allegiance to Bo-Katan, it's not every house.
Right.
So if another house found out on how Bo-Katan actually got the Darksaber, let's say someone named Moff Gideon, you could in the future have another Civil War situation in which you have other houses challenge Bo-Katan for the throne of Mandalore. And her claim to the Darksaber, saying that she did not win it in combat, thus she does not have the rightful claim to the weapon that can unite all of Mandalore. So there is an unanswered question, though, in all of this. How does Moff Gideon get the Darksaber? Now, Chirizi, my question to you is this important? Is this something that we must have an answer to?
Yes. And I think it's going to have to be answered in these, not necessarily in this series, but there's going to be some kind of series, I would assume, about Mandalore and Bo-Katan working to take back Reign of Mandalore and her people. And you start to, when you start to think about it, you have to assume that the purge happened at some point, and during that, Gideon likely bested Bo-Katan in combat and got that Darksaber, which made it his to own, his to dominate the Mandalorians. And then at some point, in all of that, Bo's trying to put things back together, but does not have the respect of the scattered Mandalorians.
Mhm.
And in order to try and do that, she has to get this Darksaber back. She has to win it in combat to prove that while she failed previously, when she got it without doing that, when she got it, unjustly, that now she's going to rightfully reclaim this, and then she will be the leader that they need. I think it's partially proving it to herself, but also she's got to prove it to all these kind of scattered clans to come back together under a leader. And the fact that she can't do that at this point is a huge problem for her.
Okay. Because there's some people that may say, I don't think it's important, but I do think it's important. And this is an unanswered question that hopefully a future episode or future series or future movie, we do understand how Moff Gideon gets a Darksaber, because I'm working on the assumption, Teresi, that Moff Gideon also does not have a legit claim to the Darksaber.
It's possible. It's possible it was stolen during the purge.
Right.
Um, it seems though he knows so much about it that you would think that he would have tried to obtain it in the way that gives him power over those people.
Hmm. Hmm. Maybe. I guess again, it raises so many possibilities. We really don't know Moff Gideon's backstory, other than from Bill Burr's character last week, that there are some that used to be Empire that have zero interest in finding Moff Gideon, and Moff Gideon was former ISB, which is what would you compare ISB to? It's the Imperial Security Branch or something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
I think you would compare it to like CIA or KGB would be
Got it.
the kind of institute. It's an information bureau, but it's also, you know, it's also, you know, trained killers to
Right.
for lack of a better term.
So I think this is important, because if Bo-Katan does not have a legitimate claim to the Darksaber, according to Mandalore laws and lore, well, neither does Moff Gideon. He has it, but he's not the rightful heir, or the wielder, I should say, of the Darksaber. But you can make the case that neither is Bo-Katan, because she never won it in combat. And,
Right.
piggybacking what you said, Treasy, that's why she wants to face Moff Gideon so bad. Which is why I think she shows so much disappointment that it's Din, because Din won the Darksaber in combat. So Din now has the legit claim to the Darksaber, a weapon that can unite all Mandalorian houses. So you, again, kind of follow the path of many other stories, the reluctant hero becoming the leader of all these houses. It's like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, using that example. He does not want to follow his destiny. He does not want to be the king of Gondor, even though that has always been his path and it is his rightful throne. But it requires rebuilding the sword, uh, that he has no interest in doing, but he must in order to save the day. And I wonder if we're going to be following a similar path with Din. Din doesn't want to be the leader of Mandalore, but now that he does have this weapon that can unite all the houses, maybe in his future he sees where, moving forward from this part of the episode, that this is his path now. This is the way to bring Mandalore back.
I mean, I alluded to this earlier, but like, is he maybe the better leader though? Like, honestly,
He
like
could be.
he had this task, he had this quest, and he found a way to accomplish it, and he found a way to accomplish this in a fraction of the time it would have taken Bo-Katan, because Bo-Katan is on the same on a similar parallel quest that she cannot complete.
Mm-hmm.
So like she's been looking for Moff Gideon for who knows how long, you know, and Din got Moff Gideon's digits in like 30 minutes. Like I feel like
Because he knew
he's maybe
people.
the best. Well, I mean, that's part of being a leader, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't know any people, like you're not going to be that effective of a leader.
And
So I don't know. I feel like he's got ties to the New Republic now. He's got ties to the Jedi now. He's got ties to well, the armorer is probably a good person to know in the Mandalorian circles, I would guess.
Mhm.
And he's also now defeated Moff Gideon and basically stolen a light cruiser. He's got some street cred, I'd say.
and another way to look at this, Bo-Katan only believes that Mandalorians can take back Mandalore. And now having Din be the leader, to your point, Terezi, that's not true. There
Well,
are allies that could help.
well, that's the other thing too, though. That what's interesting, you mentioned that she only thinks Mandalorians can do this, and in and obviously they're kind of retconning this, but in the earlier series, you know, they brush off Jango Fett and Boba Fett as, they're not Mandalorians.
Mhm.
And, what we're seeing now is it's because they're foundlings. And so, like, the upper crust does not consider them Mandalorians.
Right.
Bo-Katan, who is very angry about Boba Fett's existence, may feel the same way about Din. Like, you're not a real Mandalorian. You're a foundling.
Right.
You
And
know?
we did get a fan question regarding as far as that relationship. So
Oh,
we'll discuss that more into detail.
I jumped the line. Well, I'll I'll definitely have some more on that though. Then we get to that.
All right. So we're missing the talk though. That is a debate that's been happening, and based on Clone Wars and Rebels content, executive produced by Dave Filoni, who has a huge role as far as Mandalorian show. If people ask, okay, but really, who has the rightful claim to the Darksaber based on Mandalorian law and lore? It is Din. Din is the rightful owner of the Darksaber. And if Bo-Katan wants it, she's going to have to fight Din. So more on that later. But back to the story. So here we are. They take over the bridge. And as soon as Moff Gideon is done and explaining as far as how the Darksaber rules work, and Bo-Katan is a bit heartbroken, the Dark Troopers are now flying back. So Fennec notices that we have incoming as far as alerts going on the radar. And they ask how many life forms, and she says none. We know who it is. It's the Dark Troopers flying back. Really awesome to see, and just the sheer number of Chirizi. It just, man, it instills this concern of Misa people gonna die. Yeah, they're gonna die if they don't find a way to either protect themselves or shield themselves. So they decide we need to close the blast door on the bridge. And we see the Dark Troopers back to the Rock'em Sock'em robots. Two of them just continuing to punch the blast door. And they're about to break through. And before we get to the next part, there's people are like wondering why they don't have explosives or other ways to go to the blast door. But I kind of like this strategy here of having the Dark Troopers trying to punch their way through the door, because it does add more dramatic timing of doom is coming for our heroes that have nowhere to go, and they're locked in this room and there is no escape.
Also, I mean, like it does make a little bit of sense for them to not have explosives. Like if they're, the way that they attack, the way that they're kind of all like single file and like very much like troops, like you don't want one of them to explode, right? So that would be a major weakness. It's like leaving the reactor with a hole so that you can shoot right into it. So I think the Empire is trying to minimize those weaknesses, and so yeah, they've got 100 Darth Vaders that could punch through someone's face. They don't need explosives, so they're just going to leave them without explosives. It makes sense to me, but man, they look awesome.
They
I mean,
do look awesome.
they're just like they're like Vader robots, man. I love it. They should have given them lightsabers. That would have been awesome.
Well, then we see off to the distance a single X-Wing arrives, and then more snark from Cara Dune. One X-Wing. Great. We're saved. And when I saw the X-Wing, man, a lot of ideas went in my head. Like, is it going to be Dave Filoni's character? That doesn't make sense. At first, I thought, well, maybe this could be Ahsoka coming. But no, Ahsoka never flew an X-Wing.
Right.
Like, but then I'm like, this is a Jedi. Like, I don't know which Jedi yet, but this is a Jedi. So who did you think it was
So,
when you saw the X-Wing?
so I thought it was, and I'm blanking on the name, but it's the guy who's with Filoni who shot up he shows up in a later episode. At first, I thought it was him when he's coming in on the X-wing. So I thought it was just going to be basically a cut into the new Rangers of the New Republic. I thought it was going to be. As it starts to land, there is faint music being played, and I just kind of, and this is one thing that I really like about these being on TV, is that I can just go insane in my house. And I jumped up and I was like, that's Jedi music, that's Luke. And uh Cornsey, I think, just, threw something through our wall. It was a very exciting moment in our house. We wouldn't have been appreciated in a movie theater because we were, yelling and screaming.
You wouldn't be
Um,
the only ones
I,
because
I think that would be the case. Like I think it would be like it would be like Def Comedy Jam, basically. We'd be running up the aisles like freaking out, like, because it would be that amazing. Um, but yeah, like I was like, this is Luke. And this. I've talked about this. I did not want Luke to be the one to answer the call. I didn't like that idea. And they gave it to me anyways, and I can definitely say I was wrong, because I loved it. It was awesome.
this is the moment where I openly said, "Oh my God, it's Luke," to Kim. And she's like, "What?" And it also brings up the question, why are security monitors still black and white uh, in the Empire? Really need to upgrade, guys. As soon as the green lightsaber went on and you saw the glove in the left hand, that just verified, yep, this is Luke Skywalker. And the fighting and how clean the cuts were, and just we saw on how strong these dark troopers were, and they had no shot against Luke Skywalker. And this is something that we brought up last week when we were talking about future stories with Star Wars and the directions that they're going. Like, they can't hide from Luke Skywalker forever.
Right.
Like, we know how Luke Skywalker's story ends, we know how it begins, but we don't see Prime Skywalker. And this is a 10-minute glimpse of Prime Luke Skywalker. And I know there's a lot of people, especially, how do I want to say this? The Last Jedi enthusiasts who, again, are kind of making fun of the decision that they went with CGI Mark Hamill instead of casting someone else to play Luke Skywalker. And I think this is the reason why Peyton Reed directed this episode. He has directed the Ant-Man and
Mm-hmm.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. And he has made
and Bring It On.
Bring It On. Don't forget about Bring It On. Yeah. Michael Douglas, using the de-aging effects on Michael Douglas when Michael Douglas was in his prime days as Ant-Man. So he has experience in this. And I know that this is a little bit of Rogue One magic as well. But I'm perfectly fine with it. Eventually, if you are going to have Luke Skywalker play a bigger role in a movie or in a show, I'd like him to cast Sebastian Bach, which we have spoken
Sebastian
about.
Bach. I'm gonna go with Sebastian Stan.
Stan, I'm sorry.
But I actually like the Sebastian Bach idea too.
Oh.
Just like rips a solo in the middle.
Yeah.
Actually, he's a singer, but whatever. Yeah. We're messing this up quite a bit. But
yeah, we are. So Sebastian Stan. And he maybe in Rogue Squadron, there's already rumors that they could bring Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker into Rogue Squadron, the new movie that's going to be directed by Patty Jenkins. But how did you feel about Luke Skywalker before he gets off the elevator? Because we're going to talk about the elevator scene in a second. But him cutting through the Dark Troopers, and then the fact that it's CGI Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I liked kind of everything they did here. The scene where you see his hand in the black glove, when he kind of opens up a little bit more, and you could see a little bit more of his outfit, and you're like, yes, this is Episode 6 Luke Skywalker. I know this look. The green lightsaber, you got it all. And then what's kind of awesome is they didn't make him kill anybody. He gets to be this incredible, like, cutting through everyone, but it's all droids, right? It's just, and I think, I don't know if when we saw the Dark Troopers, I'm not sure I know who else could have shown up and me been okay with that happen, like them just kind of cutting through all of them. Maybe Ahsoka, but did you want Ahsoka to be revealed already, like in that kind of scenario. I think she's gonna have her own show. We want to keep that off to the side. Then it's got to be Luke. Like there's no one else. There's no other person that's powerful enough to really handle that, unless like you go way outside of you know into some crazy ideas. So I loved it. I thought it was a really, if you're gonna use Luke Skywalker, perfect execution of using Luke Skywalker.
And I loved, as far as getting out of the elevator, on like father, like son. So Rogue One, of course, the famous scene when the rebel soldiers are trapped with Darth Vader. And if you haven't seen Rogue One, spoiler alert, it doesn't go well for the rebel soldiers. And just like and Luke, just like his dad, gets off the elevator, and all in black, different color lightsaber, but different types of path. And the reason why I like it is that it is a thin line. It really is, between Sith and Jedi. It is a thin line. And if you ever feed into the fear, uh, especially fear of loss as a Jedi, you can quickly become a Sith, embracing the dark side and the usage of the Force in dark ways to combat your loss of fear. And the way that they shot this, that it's very similar, I thought was absolutely terrific. And every time I see it now, I'm going to think of Rogue One, and I love Rogue One, and I love that scene with Darth Vader. And I'm so glad we get a very similar version with Luke Skywalker.
Him crushing that last Dark Trooper was just awesome. Like I just loved every minute of it. And there's, as a Last Jedi enthusiast, I would say that this is a good step towards the more arrogant Luke Skywalker, right? You're seeing someone who's just unmatched. Like he walks through there without there is not a chance for these dark troopers that are the most formidable enemy that we've seen in this entire show. And so I think it's building up towards that. It's doing that nicely. But also just, I can watch this scene over and over again. It's just so awesome.
So again, the question that we had, who answered Grogu's call, from our episode 2 episodes ago, we named a bunch of other Jedi. Maybe we thought this is where Ezra Bridger would get involved, but I think they're going to save Ezra now for the Ahsoka series. Luke Skywalker answered Grogu's call. And I'm really happy. It makes sense, though, Treasy. I know that's not the direction that you wanted them to go into, because it would be cool to introduce the other Jedi that have survived Order 66 and have been hermits or lived off the radar during this entire time during the rebellion, because they were afraid to be exposed. But it does make sense. Like, Grogu is incredibly strong with the Force. That was an incredibly strong force field that he launched, making the call out into the galaxy. And it just makes sense that the strongest Force user at this time would be able to hear and decide to answer that call.
And destroy all those guys, right? Like, I had the Quinlan Voss idea. I think a lot of people thought that too. But he's like 70 at that point. Right? Like, so, like, you're not going to have, like, a guy like, kind of like Obi-Wan in episode 4. Like, he doesn't have all the skills that he did. He's not going to tear through the dark troopers and save the kid, right? And I think you kind of need that in this case, because you got to prove to Din, like, yeah, I'm the guy that he's supposed to go with.
Right. Doesn't say his name at all, right? Din just asks, "Are you a Jedi?"
Yeah.
And Luke says yes. So Din has no idea who this guy's name is.
So you think it could be from Legends, Luke?
No.
The clone of Luke. Is that what you're getting at?
No, but maybe the biggest payoff, though, in the 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, beyond seeing Ahsoka and meeting all these characters from Rebels and Clone Wars, from seeing Luke Skywalker in action again, bigger than all of that, in my opinion, is that we do get this moment where Grogu and Din say goodbye to each other, and Din takes off the helmet. Again, kind of going into being more comfortable taking the helmet off and showing his face from the previous episode in order to complete the mission to find Grogu. That we do get this touching moment between Grogu and Din, and I do wonder if this is the end. Are we done with Baby Yoda when it comes to Star Wars content, Treasy?
So just real quick, when he took the helmet off, you know, he took the helmet off and he got it to like about halfway, and I thought he was just going to show his face to Grogu, but he takes it completely off with everybody around, which I think is a huge, turn for the character.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. And you know me, I love the scum and villainy of Star Wars. That's what I'm here for. But even me, even someone who is there just to see Pre Vizsla get his head chopped off, if you weren't touched by this moment, like you just are like a heartless person. Like you just you have no emotion if you weren't just like, oh man, this is a really touching scene. And he makes the promise to him that they will see each other again. And I believe it. And I think if we're not going to have Ben Solo chop Grogu up into little green pieces, we have to come up with a way that Grogu left at some point, right? And he could be fully trained. I'm not saying that he doesn't have to be fully trained, but if Din is in trouble at some point and Grogu is a mature force user, force wielder, he will sense it and he will go find Din to come to his aid. Like that's kind of how you could see this coming back together.
Yeah, I'm thinking if we do get a movie or a mini series about the retaking of Mandalore, if that's when we'll see Grogu again, helping Din take over Mandalore, especially if Thrawn and the Empire, what the remnants of the Empire are, if they are the combating force over Mandalore. And again, I mean, it'd be interesting for Luke, now the Jedi Master, with the Padawan sensing trouble with loved ones through the Force, now wanting to leave. Of course, that's the whole plot to Empire Strikes Back, and we know what happens there. I could see that happening, but there's also a part of me, Teresi, that this might be the last time that we see Baby Yoda. And if it is, I'd be a bit sad because Grogu is such a great character and has brought so much joy to our lives in these first 2 seasons that I would hate for this character to go. But as we learned in Star Wars, nobody is gone forever.
Yeah, and I mean, the only reason I could think that he would, not show up again is if Disney suddenly hated money. And I don't think they do.
Which they do not.
I think they like it. Yeah, so I mean, I think that like a teenage which would be, I guess he would be like 150. Teenage Grogu would be something that would be interesting to come to Din's aid. I guess he wouldn't be that old, but like I have no idea how these things age because I only know the youngest one ever and the oldest one ever. So what his next piece of his lifespan looks like, I have no idea. But it would be great to see him show up to save Din from some circumstance.
Right. Is this the last time we see Luke Skywalker in this storyline?
I don't know. I think it's the last time we see Mark Hamill do this. I mean, like I think you could pull off the CGI moderately well for this scene, right? And it would be extremely difficult to do it otherwise. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
even with
time to.
the colored beard and everything, he looked much older. So you need to, if you're gonna do it, you need to do it with someone else. I think though, if we can see him be successful with some Jedi and send them off into the world, again, it could build towards his arrogance and hubris of like, you know, I'm this new Jedi master. I know everything. Um, it could lead to what happens in the later movies. Also, you know, you could save a few lives that I had considered lost, like Jason Syndulla. Like I could see
Mm,
him being trained by Luke and being gone by the time, you know, everything burns to the ground.
right. So the post-credit scene. This is a shocker. This is not what I was expecting. I was alerted on Twitter that everyone said you need to stay through the credits, just like the Marvel movies. Nice touch, by the way. I'm a big fan of the post-credit scene, especially if you're going to be promoting or highlighting something new. And again, the shot of the two suns were on Tatooine. That's Jabba's palace. This is interesting. What angle are they going with this? And it was just kind of fun to see what's happened to the place since Jabba died. By the way, I like the fact that Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker did not cross paths, because if they totally did, that would have been very interesting. But now we get the announcement as Fennec did her job taking out the room and Boba Fett takes over the chair. We are getting the book of Boba Fett in December of 2021. And when we talked about new shows in our last episode that Disney announced during the investor relations call, uh, we knew that we were going to get some type of Mandalorian show also scheduled for December 2021. So now, Terezi, I ask you, is the book of Boba Fett season 3 of The Mandalorian?
So, I mean, I think it's going to take its slot for sure. I think when we talked last week, I thought Boba Fett was done. I thought that this
Me
episode
too.
he would die in this episode. Um, horribly sad. The original actor Jeremy Bulloch passed this week, which is, you know, very unfortunate. But I thought that it was going. I thought that was going to be even sadder, and we were gonna lose the Boba Fett character this week too. Um, but they went a different way with this, and yeah, I can't imagine them going, okay, we're gonna have two different shows next December
Right. At the
running.
same
They're
time.
just not gonna do that. And if I recall from what I've heard, I wasn't at the shareholder meeting. I didn't listen to it. Um, I don't think they ever said that Mandalorian will have a season 3.
Hmm.
So this may be in place of it. Um, a couple quick notes. I did love that Bib Fortuna got 108 thick.
A lot of weight.
He put on a nice 150 pounds. I like a universe where the boss, the like the best, the kind of guy on top, the important person is thick. I'm into this. Boba's thick now. He fits right in. We're going in a good direction as Star Wars goes. Also, I think this is the crime syndicate show many of us have wanted. Like the underworld of Star Wars is super interesting and not delved into quite enough. And I talked last week about I want a pirate movie. I want Taika Waititi to do some kind of pirate or smuggler movie. This is a show, this Book of Boba Fett, that could be this crime underworld thing. They're on Tatooine, so I'm gonna guess you're gonna get back Timothy Oliphant, possibly Amy Sedaris. Like I think there's a lot of fun stuff you could do here. I'm I'm very excited for this.
I wonder if we get Crimson Dawn. Did Crimson Dawn survive what happened at the Clone Wars? And have they continued as far as their syndication? And will Boba Fett have to battle against them? Bad guys versus bad guys. So I think it'd be really interesting. And again, it's another angle that I think would draw in a lot of Star Wars fans, and we can learn more about the Star Wars lore going into a different path, especially with what we've seen with the Mandalorian. So I'm excited. And I think for those that love Boba Fett and you thought that, hey, we're seeing more Boba Fett in action than we've ever seen before, we are in luck. There's more to come. And that will be taking place next year in December 2021. And let's face it, if we do get another season of Din and Bo-Katan, we are talking huge production and a product at a scale that would rival the movies. And with everything that's been going on with COVID, it's just hard to pull off in this summer, especially with so much unknown and with so many resources. Now that we know that Kenobi is shooting this spring, and that's still going to be under a lot of unknowns. I think everybody heard about the meltdown that Tom Cruise had on set with Mission Impossible. Hollywood's still dealing with COVID and trying to shoot these movies during these times and try to keep everybody healthy. It's not always been successful. I think Robert Pattinson got COVID while shooting the new Batman movie, and that's really impacted as far as reshoots and finally releasing that production. I think if we do see Din in the future, they're going to need some time to shoot it. So I that's why I'm with you, Chirizi. That's why I think the Book of Boba Fett is season 3 of The Mandalorian, because Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni need time to properly shoot a new season of Din and Bo-Katan.
And who knows if it comes back as The Mandalorian, right? Maybe we get a new show that is like, it's still some of the same characters, but it's completely different, a different title. I'd be fine if every Star Wars series that comes out is two seasons or less.
16 to 20 episodes.
Yeah, like I don't need 11 seasons of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give me 2 really great seasons of something, and then let's do the next thing. There's so much to explore. Let's not just get bogged down in one thing and let it get to a point where we're just kind of like, okay, now Will Ferrell's the boss at this place. Let's just cut it short and keep it nice and clean. I like it that way. I hope that that's what they do with this.
So we talked a little bit about what's next as far as their characters, as far as will we see Grogu and Din together again. Anything else as far as to tie this up, as far as this episode with the season finale? I mean, do we think it's a season finale or do we think it's a series finale for Din?
I think it's a series finale. I think you will see some continuation of this, and you will not see Moff Gideon get into New Republic hands. Something will interrupt that.
We maybe a storyline in the Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah, like I mean, I could see him being transported and Thrawn just blowing up that ship. Like if he's working for Thrawn, like or rescuing him. Either way, like I don't see him coming back and giving. Even if he comes back, he's not going to give all the information away. Like it's just not going to happen. But I think he never makes it back into the core worlds. Is I guess what I'll say.
Yeah, so I think Gideon we could see again in the Rangers of the New Republic. I could see Bo-Katan making an appearance in the Ahsoka show. And with Grogu, I'm with you. Like Disney loves money. They will figure out a way to keep Grogu, Baby Yoda, in the spotlight. I don't know how they're going to do it, but the Force just tells me, Chirizi, that Baby Yoda will still exist. And we talked about this in our first episode. I think if you're going to compare this Star Wars content created by Favreau and Filoni, Din is Iron Man to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I do think we're going to see Din again. But just like we got Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, we didn't get Iron Man 4. We just got Iron Man in the Spider-Man movie and Iron Man in the Avengers movies. And that's where we'll see Din again.
I mean, would you hate an animated series that's a little more kid focused? That is Luke Skywalker training Grogu, Jason Syndulla, and maybe a couple other young Jedi.
Bring it
Um,
on. I would love that.
like it, it would it you could and what would be great is then you could have Mark Hamill still be that guy, right? I mean, you could have him voice himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, and then you can build that so you can see Grogu growing, and then it'll make more sense when you get to the point that Din needs him back in his life, and those two can reconnect during some larger kind of, like I don't know if it'll be a movie or a series, but like you do a movie called like Mandalore or something, and you put that into there. It would make sense. It would fit, and it would get Grogu out of there before he gets chopped up.
Exactly, because right now we are all assuming Ben Solo killed Grogu. Which, if that's the case, screw you, Kylo Ren. You do suck. All right. So to end this episode, we got some fan questions on Twitter, which, again, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at SocksMachine_Josh. You can follow Chirizi at Chirizi. And our first question comes from Riker Beta on Twitter. And Riker is asking, without spoiling anything, do you think it's possible for Disney to just Bobby Ewing in the shower the whole sequel trilogy and try again? And for those that are not as old as Teresi and I, Bobby Ewing was in Dallas. And that was a sitcom / soap opera that my mom loved to watch. And I have seen it. And I know this reference. Do you know the Bobby Ewing reference, Teresi?
It's a dream reference, right? Like the
They
whole
shot an entire season.
yeah, like the whole season didn't exist. It was just a dream that he was having in the shower or something, right?
Right. One of the characters, his wife, which she thought she was a widow for the entire season, she wakes up and there's her husband, who she dreamt died, in the shower. And the audience lost its mind and realized they just watched an entire season that was a dream sequence.
So I don't think they do that. There's been reference to them kind of saying like throwing out the sequel trilogy and doing a different sequel trilogy. I don't think so much, but what I do think they're going to do is I think they're going to throw out this idea that Snoke was like a clone. And I think that they're going to say that what Kylo saw when he walked in Exegol was just a manipulation, that the Emperor was making him believe these things, that he was actually Snoke and Snoke was a clone, and so Kylo sees all this stuff as he walks in, and it's just the Emperor kind of manipulating the situation and making him see things to make him you know un think less of what he's done, because he basically did what Vader couldn't do for most of his life with the Emperor, which was just kill the Emperor and take over. And so the Emperor's playing some kind of power game. I think they're going to do that. I think that's the piece that they're going to say, no, 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 no. Snoke wasn't really in that tube. That's not true.
Well, we talked about this last week with the upcoming episodes, the new TV series and the new movies. I think they're going to try to piece together different parts of the puzzle in their attempts to make the trilogy make more sense. Specifically, at some point, they're going to have to try to make it. They have to make sense of Palpatine's plan after death,
I
and
think the
we need to see
acolyte's going
more
to
of
be
it.
that's where they're going to start to run that theory, because I think that's where they're going to introduce Plagueis. They're going to start introducing the idea of like
Immortality.
eternal life, yeah, in becoming immortal. So I think that's where they're going to try and do that. I think, yeah, they're going to more try to retcon a plot than they are just throw it away.
Right. So even if you want the sequels to be Bobby Ewing uh, out, I don't think it's going to happen, Riker. So I'm with Cherizi. I think they're going to try to provide more clues into Palpatine's after death plan in upcoming series and shows to try to make the sequel make more sense, especially the Rise of Skywalker make more sense.
Yeah.
But Riker, thank you so much for your question. All right, we got a lot here. In our next question from Chigerian Prince. And question one, what percentage of you wanted that X-Wing to be Carson Teva and not Luke?
And so that's who I was referring to earlier. And so yes, I mean, part of me was like, oh, they're introducing that show, but I was like, what's he gonna do? So yeah, I mean, like I thought it might have been him. Like I said, when I heard the music, it immediately flipped in my mind. But yeah, there was definitely a part of me that thought, oh yeah, it's gonna be him.
So point two, and it's not really a question, but it's just a point that Shigerian is bringing up, really stretching the idea that the New Republic didn't know a goddamn thing about the First Order, with Gideon captured and Luke being like, well, they got this stuff wrapped up. I'll just take this and go with Grogu.
So I thought this was funny. I laughed when I read it. But the thing is about this is that like they did know about the First Order. They knew they were out there. And Leia in the books, you know, finds out some of this and is sharing this with the Senate. They just didn't think they were a threat. They were just like, that's just the remnant out in the outer rim. Who cares? Like they're just not a threat to us. They didn't know they had Star Killer Base about to like blow up all of Hosnian Prime. But so it's not a lack of knowledge of them as much as they just didn't believe that they were a threat, which is, again, it goes back to the arrogance and the hubris of like, yeah, no, I'm not worried about that thing. I'm much bigger than this. It's not a concern. And they talk about that in this show too. Like, you know, the core worlds don't care about what's going on out here.
Mm-hmm. And then point three, Bo-Katan be discriminatory against non-royalty, which we did see, again, that cantina scene against Boba Fett and Din. How long do you think she lasts under Din's rule? So going back to this question we were answering a little bit before without attending to earlier in this episode, but if Din is the ruler of Mandalore, how long do you think Bo-Katan lasts?
She's going to hate it. Like,
yeah, I think she'll hate it initially.
I don't know,
I don't
man.
think she would force an uprising. I think her love and trying to restore Mandalore and its past glory under her sister's rule is her end game.
But I think that end game includes her ruling it, which is a problem.
Like, do you not think she has the capacity to have a change of heart?
It's possible. It's possible that she could have a change of heart. I just think that she's going to be pretty sour on this idea. And, you know, we've seen her sour on ideas before. And True. She almost like caused a civil war. So I could see her not doing well with this.
There's a part of me that wonders if she would fight Din. Din would not want to fight her, but I could see Bo being serious about a fight against Din.
You think they should have done a Rocky 3 ending to this? and put the and like them like going at each other with the Darksaber and the spear, and then it just freeze frames into a painting.
And then Eye of the Tiger players.
What a huge miss, Kathleen Kennedy. You ruined it. You could have done that.
All right. Our next question comes from David. And David is asking Ventress, Ezra, Hondo, Captain Rex, etc. Which characters do you think has the best chance of returning for either Mandalorian or the other series?
Well, Captain Rex is already under contract, so he's
that's easy.
He's a possibility. I was actually chatting with deviate a little bit because Ventress, I had to look it up because I thought it was right, but Ventress is deceased at this point. So
How does
Ventress
Ventress
can't.
die again?
It's with Quinlan Voss. I think I forget if they're fighting Count Dooku or who they're fighting, but she basically gives her life to save his.
Hmm.
Um, and this is at the point where he was a dark side user and Ventress pulls him back from the dark side. It's there's a lot that goes on with those characters. Um, I do want to see the Hondo Taika Waititi thing,
Yes, that would be
and
perfect.
but I think Ezra is the one that I believe will show up. The world between world between worlds, I forget what it's called,
Yep, the world
uh,
between worlds.
is in the logo of the Ahsoka uh, show. I really just feel like this is going to be around her trying to find Ezra, and then the relationship moving forward with those three, with those two and Sabine. I think that's going to be a huge part of it. Captain Rex may show up in it. I don't know how much they want to actually use the same actor across these different things. So we'll see what they do with that.
That's easy money, though. Just get one contract, and just having the contract, you got to appear in the X amount of episodes of these shows.
Yeah.
Uh, that would be easy to negotiate. I think if in Ahsoka, for me, you'll have some episodes of Captain Rex. That makes sense. Eventually, you need Ezra because I think she's going to cross paths with Thrawn. Sabine Wren. I'm going to keep saying this. We need Sabine Wren.
Yeah.
She now needs to be introduced. I thought she should have been introduced in this season of The Mandalorian. But if she's not in this season of The Mandalorian, she has to be in Ahsoka.
Right.
You need to have Sabine Wren.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not a want. It is a need. She needs to be in Ahsoka. So, but the Hondo movie with Taka Waititi, oh my gosh, the possibilities. That would be so much fun.
That
So
would
much
be
fun.
the most, like, if I assume the Lando show is going to be really fun. That the Hondo show or Hondo movie
Movie.
would be equally or even more fun. I need that to happen.
Yeah. And then our last question comes
Oh,
from Quernzy.
I know this person.
Do we abandon our Darth Grogu theory, or is there still a chance?
Ah, man. She wrote this because she knows what a stubborn jerk I am, and I will not give up this theory. So the problem, so you could easily see it happening, right? Because you're not supposed to have these connections when you're a Jedi. You're not
Mhm.
supposed to basically, have a loving connection with anybody, really, where you would fear losing them. And Grogu has that with Din. And now maybe he'll learn to overcome that, and he'll handle that. Um, but it would be easy to see him need to go to try and save Din and put himself in a position that puts him in the fear of losing and go down that path that leads to the dark side, which I would love. The problem is I don't think we could see a Luke Skywalker failure like that prior to the Ben Solo failure. Because if he had that failure, a lot of the things that happen in episode 8 don't happen
Mm.
because he's already experienced that. He knows what he did wrong. Also, Darth Grogu would obviously rule the galaxy. He would be the most powerful being that's ever lived. His little beautiful Sith eyes and that big head would be too much for anyone to handle, and he would just destroy the whole universe. So I'll never abandon the theory. I want it to happen. I want it to will it to happen, but I don't think we're going to get that, unfortunately.
Well, Quarantine, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get Darth Grogu, but there's still a part of me that finds that kind of fun to see him in a Sith hood and a small little red lightsaber. But I still want to see Grogu in Mandalorian armor. I think that would be awesome.
We do have one more question. I don't know
Mm,
if it's on here, but so Southside Mando sent me some questions. I think we covered most of these in the show, but this one, while we're on Grogu, at some point Grogu is going to create his own lightsaber, right?
yes,
He says, "Will the metal ball be in the hilt of that lightsaber?"
it should. But I thought the metal ball should have been exchanged in the touching moment between Din and Grogu. But then, is that? I'm trying to remember my Jedi lore. Would Luke allow that because that continues a strong bond?
Yeah, I don't know if he would have. I mean, it's and it could have been really cheesy, right? Like if like Grogu's like walking away and then he like just turns and like
Uses the Force.
force pulls that ball over,
Yeah.
having a catch with dad one last time. Like I
Mhm.
don't know. I think that would have been a little cheesy. I mean, they brought an R2D2 to lure the child away, which was weird. But I think him getting the ball would have been, I don't know, it would have been off. It's possible Din sends it to him or something. There's ways to get it to him. I think it would be awesome if it was in the hilt of his lightsaber.
Especially at the end, right? At the very bottom,
Mm-hmm.
with it being the ball. Or maybe in the top, that's where the beam comes out as far as the sword part. That would be
Oh yeah,
kind of like Needle going back to Game of Thrones, because he's such a little guy. But
yeah.
uh no, I think it would have to be part of it. And there's got to be some part of it. But then again, there's still a part of me that kind of hopes that Grogu becomes Mandalorian. So I don't think that's going to happen now with Luke training Grogu, but there's a part of me that kind of wishes for that.
Just think if he had that little tiny, the ball from the switch there, and then he ignites that red lightsaber.
That would just shock everyone, right?
Wouldn't that be awesome? Like if he shows up when you're least expecting it, Din's in like trouble, and Grogu shows up, and you're like, oh yes, Grogu's come to save him, and the eyes turn yellow, and the red lightsaber turns on.
That would be
I
great.
I would love it.
People would be so angry. More angry than watching this last trilogy of movies. Yeah, there would be riots. There would be riots in the streets. Oh, it would be ugly. It would be ugly. But did we get any other last second questions?
No, let me see. Let me see if there's anything in the list. So there was, how long will it take Din and Grogu to meet again? Which
Could take years.
we pretty much we covered that one, I think. Let's see if there's anything new. And this could be a show of its own, me just checking Twitter. But no, that's it. I think we nailed them all.
All right. So we want to thank everyone for watching with us as we kind of decided randomly to start recapping the Mandalorian episodes in the second half of this show. Because we talk about this stuff all the time. And of course, Treasy and I, we podcast and blog a lot about the Chicago White Sox and baseball in general. So this is kind of a nice distraction to continue still making content and continue to talk, but not talk about baseball. And with so many Star Wars shows coming, if Treasy and I have the energy, which I think we may, we'll continue doing this for upcoming Star Wars content because there's plenty coming to keep us busy to continue doing this. But again, thank you to everyone that has that's watched so far from the Wayno 8 channel. And yeah, I'm planning on continuing to do this because this is fun chatting stars with you, man.
Absolutely, man. I think it's going to be interesting. I think the Bad Batch starts in like March,
Mhm.
And if we're doing, we'll probably do a few things in between there too, I'm sure. But if that's going to start kind of right in our baseball season, hopefully starting as well. So we'll see how the time works out. But man, I really want to do it. So I think if both of us are committed to it, we'll find a way to find time for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll continue doing this. And again, the next show is the Bad Batch, and then eventually Kenobi. You know how big of a fan I am of Obi-Wan Kenobi Chirizi.
Oh
I am
yeah,
going to be glued to that show, so I can't wait to talk about that. So yeah, we got years of content coming up.
Vader's in there, so you know I'm in.
Oh,
You
my
know I'm
God.
in. So
I can't wait.
we're good.
I cannot wait for their paths to cross again. But anyways, again, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, remember to subscribe to the From the 108 YouTube channel. You can follow From the 108 on Twitter at From the 108. And you can follow me on Twitter at SocksMachine_Josh. And follow Chirizi on Twitter at Chirizi. Again, thank you for watching, and may the force be with you.